My favorite thing about the Torah is its continual ability to surprise me. I mean, I've read it, I know how it ends, and yet every year as we return to it, we get the chance to discover something new. This year, what surprised me were the magicians. We first meet Pharaoh's magicians in the run-up to the plagues, when God directs Aaron to strike his rod on the ground, transforming it into a snake. Pharaoh's magicians respond by turning their rods into snakes. Ha ha! Aaron's snake then eats their snake, but that doesn't seem to impress Pharaoh. So next, God directs Aaron to place his rod in the Nile, which turns all of the water in Egypt into blood. We then read, "But when the Egyptian magicians did the same with their spells," ha ha, Pharaoh's heart grew harder, and he did not relent. A week passes, and God sends another message to Pharaoh through Moses. "If you do not let my people go, I will plague your whole country with frogs. The Nile shall swarm with frogs, and they shall come up and enter your palace, your bedchamber, and your bed, the houses of your courtiers and your people, and your ovens and your kneading bowls." Indeed, Aaron holds out the rod, and frogs come to cover the earth. But the magicians did the same with their spells and brought frogs upon the land of Egypt. Ha ha! So Pharaoh stood his ground. We usually tell this story as one of the magicians matching the power of Moses and Aaron. But what struck me this year was how absurdly unskillful their responses are. God turned all of the water in Egypt into blood, and their response was, "More blood." God covered the earth with frogs, and their response was, "More frogs." In order to increase their standing in the eyes of Pharaoh and to diminish that of Moses, the magicians make everything much, much worse. So where did they go wrong? Well, first, they forgot to imagine the world they wanted to create. In their minds, as long as Moses was losing, they were winning. But this makes them lose focus on their ultimate goal, which is to prevent their own suffering. They could have used their powers to remove the blood from the Nile instead of adding to it. They could have made the frogs disappear or summoned predators to eat them. I don't know what the correct answer was, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't more frogs. It's easy when we read the Torah to imagine ourselves as the heroes of the story. But we have more in common with these bumbling magicians than we might like to admit. How easy it is when we are confronted by our adversaries to focus on what will make them lose rather than on what will help us succeed. It's this impulse to stick it to the other guy that leads us not only into dramatic acts of brinksmanship like nuclear proliferation or spiteful government shutdowns, but also the petty interpersonal nastiness that only serves to increase division and misery in our families, in our communities, and in our nation. The story of the magicians comes to teach us of the danger of that ha-ha feeling, that vindictive sense of triumph which feels so good, is often a sign that we've lost sight of what really matters, creating a world that is more whole, more just, and more loving. The magician's second mistake was to imitate someone else's magic instead of unleashing their own. Our commentators claim that the sorcery produced by the magicians was a pale imitation of what God created through the hand of Moses. Sure, they turned water into blood, but only a little bit, and it didn't last. And they imagined that the animals brought out of the Nile by Aaron were actually crocodiles, while the magicians brought forth the more common toady amphibian. By the time Aaron proceeds to turn dust into lice, the magicians find they cannot replicate the magic at all. We rarely harness our greatest power by imitating others. As Jewish philosopher Martin Buber taught, every person born into this world represents something new, something that never existed before. For if there had been someone like them, there would have been no need for them to be in the world. Every person's foremost task, he says, is the actualization of their unique, unprecedented, never recurring personalities, potentialities, and not the repetition of that of another, be it even the greatest, already achieved. The Christian theologian Frederick Buechner described this process of discovery as finding one's vocation. The place God calls you to is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. The place God calls you to is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. In order to reach our God-given potential, Buber and Buechner suggest we need to both understand what the world needs and meet that need with our own particular magic. That process of imagining the world as it could be and uncovering the unique divine spark that lies within is the work of a lifetime. Our world is broken in so many ways. Particularly over these past years of pandemic, it feels like our hearts have become hardened, our spirits cramped. There is a meanness in the way we speak to one another. And as we become more polarized, it gets easier and easier to focus on making the other side lose, rather than on creating the world that we wish to see. But this is not inevitable. We need not answer each plague we encounter by doubling down. We each have a divine spark within us, unique gifts that can help us bridge the gap between the world as it is and the world as it could be. The next time we start to experience the exhilaration of that ha-ha feeling, let it be a reminder to us, the world doesn't need more frogs. It needs more justice, more compassion, creativity, and love. And the power to fill that need is always already in our own hands. Shabbat Shalom.